Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Record Rangers podcast. My name's Gavin Berry, and once again, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Andy Newport, Record Sports Andy Newport, and Douglas Dickie, who'll give us a fans view, a passionate fans view. Douglas, I think is that what we say? A very
yeah. I think so. I think so, Gavin. Aye.
Well, you know,
Douglas, I saw you in Edmondson Drive about
no comment.
No
comment.
Swapping at the roof.
No comment. Let's just say that my balaclava's in for dry cleaning now. So,
no, God, it's funny. The three of us sat here a week ago, and it's hard to believe it was a week ago we're sitting. And of course, the big topic was, you know, Russell Martin was being mocked for this team bonding exercise, the wild water swimming out in Loch Lomond and the walk up Conic Hill. And we said, you know, we debated whether it'd be a good idea. We said, well, we'll only know come 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Of course, Rangers 2, Hibs 0. So much happened around the game, Andy, but let's just start with that, the team bonding. But Rangers safely into the semi-finals of the Premier Sports Cup. So was it a masterstroke?
You'll wish you'll have taken the plunge sooner. I mean, it was sink or swim time, and he's come out the deep end. There we go. So get every pun going. So
kept his head above water.
Listen, I mean, I think we all said it, that it's one of these things that teams do as a matter of regular occurrence. It's just happened to be the timing coming sort of so hot in the heels of that disastrous defeat to Hearts last weekend, when we saw the protests sort of really sweep round Ibrox, the chants of the Martin GTF chants. That's why people are questioning it. The team, the accusation was thrown at Russell Martin after that game that his team didn't look coached. Obviously, that has stung him. He admitted that last week that was a barb thrown by one of the fan media guys. That was an insult, really, that happened when it hurt, and he referenced it again. But I think the accusation was, well, why you take them, you know, hill climbing? Why you take them for a dip in Loch Lomond when you could be out in the training field working on some of the issues? But I think he clearly felt that a lot of the issues were psychological. They were anxiety, and it could be helped just by, you know, fostering some sense of team unity, some togetherness. And I think you did see that they looked certainly a more, they had a better show of togetherness about them. They didn't panic. They didn't get themselves into some of the kind of sticky situations that they have done this season. It was certainly a performance against Hibs at the weekend that was, I think Russell Martin hope it's a turning point, and it has to be that if he's going to survive. But, you know, there were certainly at long last some encouraging signs. But, you know, there's I think I said in Hotline Live yesterday, there is still a long way to go for him before he's out the woods yet.
Yeah, it's true, Douglas. One swallow doesn't make a summer. But do you think it's funny when you look at the kind of reaction to the game? I don't know whether, you know, it depends what camp you're in. You know, some people were almost over-exaggerating it, you know, and making it better than it actually was. And then I felt some were almost underplaying it because they didn't want to give any credit. You know, if that result, let's see, Rangers had just had a normalish start to the season, you know, a couple of wins here, and it wasn't the kind of, you know, disastrous start that it's been. I mean, how do you think you would have viewed that game? You know, tricky game. Hibs, you know, had started the season fairly well. You know, how would we be looking at that game in isolation?
Yeah, I think you know, had we not been just like half an hour before kickoff, we went 11th in the league. It all seemed a wee bit surreal. Had that kind of not been the situation, then yeah, I think we'd be kind of sitting there saying that was a really professional performance. Hibs always seem to give us a game at Ibrox. Our record against Hibs at Ibrox is actually worse than it is at Easter Road in the kind of past 10 years. For some reason, it's a stadium obviously Hibs like to come to, but without wanting to be kind of disrespectful, you know, Rangers at home in the League Cup against MD, I think the fans have a right to expect us to go through, and you know, in some ways, the fact that we're so happy about kind of eking out a 2-0 win over Hibs kind of suggests where we kind of are in the grand scheme of things. We got, I do think, against Hearts, notwithstanding the overall performance, we were obviously on the end of some really bad refereeing and VAR decisions. I wouldn't say we got away with one on Saturday because it was a handball, but at least this one, that was a kind of decision that might well not have gone for us the week before, and I think that's maybe given us a boost. Had that goal stood, I think we'd be sitting here having a very, very different conversation right now, because the team still, to me, looks mentally weak. Obviously, there was a big narrative around, it's Nico Raskin that's come back and scored the opening goal. Maybe begs the question, where has Nico Raskin been for the past 3 weeks, when he could obviously have been doing his, giving us a helping hand out there on the pitch. I think for me, actually, the biggest story for me that's come for the game is that our £8 million striker's still sitting on the bench, to be honest, and instead we're playing a guy who has obviously come in not as heralded, I suppose, Miovski, but Miovski for me has made that kind of number 9 position his own already. I think he looks a decent acquisition, but again, we've got a guy who costs a lot of money sitting on the bench, and for me, that's a big worry about Saturday, and it's a big worry going forward, because if you can't get yourself into this team, then when's you going to get yourself in the team?
Yeah. Andy, you actually spoke to Bojan Miovski after the game, and I noticed in your piece, you had asked him, or someone had certainly asked him, about the possibility of playing as a 2, and I think we discussed it here just after the transfer window about how Russell Martin could maybe fit the 2 of them in. So, I mean, what do you think, based on what Douglas is saying and the money that Chermiti cost? Is it important that he gets the 2 of them in, or do you think Chermiti will eventually be the number 1?
Listen, I don't think they're going to rush him in. I think that much is obvious, just on the basis of how little football he's played. I wrote a piece this morning, there's some quotes from Chermiti that were in the Rangers programme, and obviously he spoke about the difficulties he had down in Everton, but I think, listen, he's come here, he admits himself, he's come here to play, he wants to get these minutes. He's developed kind of stalled when he was at Everton, and the whole reason he came here was because he saw it as an opportunity to sort of kickstart his career. But I think right now, Bojan Miovski's, he's up to speed. He's played games already this season. I think one with Girona. He's also played with his national team, North Macedonia. He knows the league. He's slightly older. He's got slightly a better track record of scoring goals. So I think, you can look at the transfer fees and goes, right, you need to play Chermiti because he's the guy that cost the club's second highest ever transfer fee. But I think right now, Bojan Miovski is the more established of the 2 frontmen, despite he only came in basically a quarter of the money that's taken to sign Chermiti. But I think eventually they will have to find a way of getting him into the team to get him perhaps playing alongside Miovski. I think Russell Martin did speak himself, saying that whilst he has certainly a set way of playing and a set style that he wants to play, the actual formation itself can change. So I think they have tinkered with playing 3 at the back at times. That might allow them to get another central striker on. Obviously, I think he definitely needs a run of games, because he didn't look at his sharpest when he came on. I mean, he has that chance, sort of stoppage time. It's 3-2. He's 2-0 up at that point. There's no pressure on Hibs. Didn't ever look like they were going to cause the kind of upsets that we've seen Rangers suffer this season. He just has to go and roll it in the net, and immediately that would have dispelled a lot of the doubts about him. But he fires it straight to the keeper, and I think you're already starting. I mean, he played less than 20 minutes probably across his 2 substitute appearances so far, and I think you're already getting people that are going, this is an awful lot of money for this kid, and we've not seen anything. I mean, what I would say is that for a big lad, he brushed off the ball a couple of times quite easily at the weekend, and that would again make me think, is he really cut out for the physical aspect of Scottish football, if he's getting sort of just knocked off the ball quite as easily as he is for a guy, 6'4"? I'd be expecting a guy his size to be sort of ragdolling defenders himself. But listen, the club are going to be really quick to try and shoot down any massive hype around this guy because and will want to just allow himself to bed into the team. But fans aren't in the mood to give anyone time right now, especially a guy who's cost £8 million. They're going to want a return in this pronto. So, I feel for him. He's going to be under pressure. What age is he? 21. He's got a big price tag to justify. But as we all say, it's not him who sets the fee. But like at Olympic, he's going to have to live up to it. And if he doesn't, he'll be written off. And then the flag will start flying towards other people, probably Kevin Thelwell, most chiefly, being the guy who's signed him not once, twice now, having spent something in the region of £23 million on him.
My big worry with both the strikers is both of them look more comfortable kind of try to run in behind defences. They both seem to make runs in behind an awful lot, which doesn't to me seem like a particularly Martin way of playing. I thought he'd have wanted guys who were coming short for it to try and create space in behind them. You can then use the wingers to kind of get in behind the defences and whatnot, but both of them look very keen to kind of play in that last shoulder, which also suggests they're both quite similar themselves. So I'm not sure you're going to get the two of them together without asking one of them to kind of reel in their own kind of natural game. I think it'll be interesting to see going forward, but that's my concern with both of them right now, is they both look far more comfortable kind of playing off the shoulder, and it seems like we're maybe wanting them to come shorter and hold the ball up and bring other guys into play rather than try to get in behind and get those kind of one-on-ones with the goalkeeper and whatnot.
Andy, what about the overall performance on Saturday? What do you think? Do you think fans generally, because there's so much negativity, do you think they're loath to admit that it was, they almost don't want to accept that was a good performance? Because, it could have been, you're talking about the chances, and Antman had a chance sort of late on. It could have been 3 or 4.
It certainly probably should have been more than it was.
So why is it not more sort of, is it just because people are dead against Russell Martin and it's like, I don't want to admit it? Or is it just not enough in the grand scheme of things? Is that it? It's just been such a horrible start that it's almost, we're not going to see.
It's one game, which is what all it is. It seems obvious to say that, but it's one game. So the fans have reached a conclusion based on what they've seen of the previous 12. So, listen, I think what we're seeing now is he's going to get time, whether the fans like it or not. And most of them had already, if it was down to them, he'd be gone weeks ago. I've been saying that ever since probably the Bruges game at home. That had it been down to them, he'd have been gone that night. But the board also decided to stand by him. They've decided that this continual sacking of managers does the club no benefit whatsoever. So they're going to stand by him. Now, it's down to him. He's got an opportunity here to turn it around. If he can get a result against Genk on Thursday night, if he can go to Livens and get a result, if they can go to Graz next week and get a result, if they can go to Falkirk after that and get a result. And by the way, you'd argue those are 4 winnable games. That's a chance for him to build up the momentum that he's been talking about. And then people might be willing to give him a bit of slack. But at any point over the next 4 games leading up to the next international break, if he slips up, you're just going to see a repeat of what you saw before the game, during the game, last week against Hearts. So I think he is really, in terms of the fans, he's living on a game-to-game basis. Whether or not the boards, are quite as ruthless as that, that remains to be seen. Right now, they've shown that they're willing to show patience, but again, we saw it was 18,000 empty seats at the weekend. You're talking, what's that going to be worth? About £500,000, something in the region of that, I would imagine. To club coffers, looks like the Europa League packages are well down from being sold out. So again, this is all coming at a financial cost to the club, to the owners, at a time when they're having to invest heavily to sort of rebuild the place after the shambles of the last couple of years. So they're going to eventually want to see a return, football return, a financial return, and that's when the pressure will come. But right now, he's getting the time, he's getting the patience, Beaky has to deliver upon that. If they get to the international break and are continue to sort of play the way they were previous to this Hibs game, then I think he's good. I think he's done at that point.
I mean, I don't know how, Douglas, you ever succeed in that environment in the way that Andy's talked about. I think it was maybe Chris Boyd that said at the weekend on Sky, I think he was maybe saying, you know, if Russell Martin wins 10 games in a row and then loses 11th, everybody will just say, oh, well, you know, you'll be back to square one. I mean, unless you go and win every single game from now at the end of the season, which is just never going to happen, then how can you ever succeed?
I think the problem there is he's made the rod for his own back with the start. You know, had we not started so poorly, then that wouldn't be the situation. I think everyone was willing to accept that there was going to be teething problems. I don't think people are going to willingly accept that we could be bottom of the league in a few days' time. And ultimately, that's a problem of Russell Martin's own making. You know, I was discussing it over the weekend, and if I'm being honest, in the short term, in the immediate term, there's not really an awful lot he can do to win fans over, because his next opportunity is going to be that League Cup semi-final. In all honesty, unless we do something really good in Europe, that might buy him a bit of time. But in terms of Scotland, we've now got a run of games that look really winnable on paper. And it feels like he's just one bad result away from another crisis. But that's because of the start we've made. Had we won 5 league games out of 5 or whatever it is, we wouldn't be sitting here in this position. So ultimately, this is of Russell Martin's own making. And until there's something tangible, in terms of maybe medium term, for me, you're looking at by Christmas, you've got to be level with Celtic in the league. Now, people might say, or within touching distance. Now, people might say that's a bit unfair because there's not a lot we can do about Celtic's results. But again, that's because we've had such a bad start. So if we can't catch Celtic, that's because we've fumbled the start. You're looking at having the League Cup won. I think that's now something that's got to be his top, not top priority, but it's got to be a priority for him, because I don't think people are going to accept another semi-final, another Hampden humiliation against Celtic. And he's got to win, especially his home games in Europe. I mean, Genk are 13th or 14th in the Belgian league, but then we're 11th in the Scottish Premier League. So, these are games he's just got to win them. Falkirk away, Livingston away, artificial surface, not great, but we do have a decent record at Livingston. These are games that there can't really be any excuses. We can't have the bedding in excuses. We can't have anything like that now. But until that Celtic game on, it'll probably be November the 2nd, I would imagine, the Sunday, I don't think there's an awful lot he can do to change people's minds, to be honest.
Yeah. Andy, Douglas was saying earlier, why was Raskin not in, when left out of these key games? Obviously, returns, opening goal, man of the match display. So I mean, does that show he was wrong, to drop him? Or do you think in dropping him, he got the reaction which now allows it to him to move forward? Because obviously there was this issue, between the two of them. So as a manager, did he not almost have to do that because he could have just let it fester?
I think he realised that by leaving Nico Raskin at his team, he was just cutting his nose off to spite his face. I mean, whatever point he was trying to make, he can say he's made it now. Left him out for 2 big games, 2 games that he really probably had to win, and they didn't. They drew obviously with Celtic and obviously had that disaster against Hearts. So I don't think at that point, what good's it doing you? I mean, having a standoff with your best player, I think he realised that the Hibs game was won, given the protests, given the fact that Andrew Kavanagh's flown back and he had to win. And so, by leaving your best player out your team, you're not doing your odds of getting a result in that game much good. I think just going back to what you're saying there to Douglas, and just in terms of, what does he have to do to win the fans over? I think a big thing is definitely the style of playing, how it looks, and how that adds to the whatever anxiety and tension you get in the stands. Because there's no doubt that when the fans see the team sort of try to fumble their way out from the back and coughing up possession 2 yards outside the box and Jack Butland getting pressurised by opposition strikers, that definitely, the fans just crack up, and that obviously leads on to players. I don't think you saw nearly as much as the sort of shaky stuff at the back yesterday. I think a big part of that is Derek Cornelius coming in, left-sided, mature, experienced, has played for a big club in Marseille. Well, I think it's 38 caps for Canada. I thought he just added an assuredness to the back line. And I also thought, I think Russell Martin spoke about this, that they'd sort of simplified the game plan a bit. I definitely think you saw that at times. There was times where if it wasn't on to do the tiki-taka stuff and, knocking it out from the back, they just lumped it along. You saw Cornelius doing that 2 or 3 times during the game. Not the prettiest. I'm sure it's not how Russell Martin really envisages the game being played, but it was exactly the right thing to do. And it was at times it turned Hibs around and got them facing their own goal, won a couple of set pieces off it, won a throw in. Just, it doesn't always have to be Brazil 1970. It doesn't always have to be you're trying to reinvent Pep Guardiola's Barcelona team. Just play the percentage football sometimes and mix it up a wee bit and don't be so predictable, because I think that's what Hearts, when they came to Ibrox week before, knew that they're going to try and pass out for the back, and if you pressurise them and you get in their faces and you show an aggression, that Rangers can't cope with that. I said in Hotline Live yesterday, I was really disappointed in Hibs and the way they went about with it. I thought the blueprint was there. One copy what Hearts did, just get right in this Rangers team's faces and they'll crumble. I didn't think Hibs did that at all. I thought they sat off and allowed Rangers just to have a lot of the ball, which I think in the end helped Rangers get into a rhythm and settle down. Even as much, like Hibs' game plan was clearly just to sit and soak up and not one over the top for Boy to run onto. Obviously, he gets the goal but uses his hand to control it. It'd be interesting to see what would happen at that point, because at that point Rangers really hadn't created much, but they got away with that and they settled down from that point, and they obviously get a couple of goals, and the second half was pretty much routine for them. But I do think that we've spoken about so much this risk with no reward football. I think they've taken away some of the risk. I still think they can be more risky at the top end of the pitch. I mean, really, the Raskin goal, 42 minutes, is the first shot on target, the first real chance of any description in the first half. So still a lot of possession without penetration, but I think you saw more of that in the second half.
Yeah.
Really how it looks, how the whole overall game plan looked, was a lot more like it in terms of, I imagine, how the punters would feel. I don't know how you felt, Douglas, looking at it. It didn't seem to be as just bewilderingly risky at the back at times, when you're like, what? A lot of time I think fans are looking at this and going, what are you doing? You're mucking about at the back, taking 20 passes to get over the halfway line, but then you don't want to knock it into the striker's feet. How did you see it?
I think the problem is he's not only is he asking guys to knock it about, kind of knock it about at the back, but he's asking guys that look incapable of doing that. Guys, it's not their natural game. John Souttar's actually quite good with the ball at his feet, but I'm not sure I think he's more good at kind of busting out with it at his feet and then maybe playing it forward to somebody. I don't think he's great with his back to the opposition goal and taking the ball like that. The big boy Giga for Wolves looked really quite effective at the start, but then in the last few weeks, so he's never even seen a football before. So I think that's been people's issue. I don't have any issue with a team playing from the back as long as they're capable of it, as long as you've got the players.
I think you're right as well. Certain guys have had whatever confidence they had stripped away by the start of the season, and then so that just exacerbates whatever issues with the guys. You look at Max Allen. I think I feel for him, because I think if he come in, be able to start on his favoured side from the off, feel his way in, and not have the whole scrutiny and the whole pressure and the whole chaos that we saw in the opening weeks, he might have got himself into a rhythm. But he gets played in the left-hand side to begin with. Everyone immediately leaps to the conclusion that this guy's a dud. And even then, when he gets put back at the right-hand side, already his confidence is crushed. And it just looks like there's no way back from it at this point. It could be a long time before you see Max Allen's in a Rangers starting lineup, because his confidence just looks absolutely short right now. So, yeah,
again,
events have conspired against so many players in this Rangers team.
I mean, Max Aarons hasn't, didn't help himself with his performance in Bruges. To be honest, every inch of guy that wanted to get sent off that decided.
But that's what I'm saying.
I can't be going with this,
That is the result of an absolutely awful start, having to be playing the wrong side with a team that wasn't functioning. He's got a young kid in front of him in Finlay Curtis, and again, unfair on him to be sort of thrust into that kind of spotlight as well. So yeah, I think there's certain guys that, if circumstances had just been a bit kinder, you might have seen a lot more from them. And I think Giga's one of those guys as well. Like, we all looked at him at the first couple of games, I thought this guy's looks like a big classy centre back, but then you look at him in that Celtic game and an absolute bomb scare at times.
There's there is a kind of feeling, a thought within some of the support that the longer Russell Martin gets to work with a player, the less effective they become. And we've kind of seen that up until the last couple of weeks. Even Gassama had looked really off the boil, but it's been good to see him, come back to, well, Antman in his first game was excellent, and then he's barely, kicked a ball since. Gassama looked a bit more, effective on Saturday, and even against Hearts last week, I thought he was one of the few that looked capable of kind of making something happen. So maybe if we can get a few guys, back to form, but ultimately we're kind of, we're standing on a knife edge either way. A draw or a defeat, the next one, it's just going to be, carnage within the support again. The big issue as well is, I feel like we're a first goal team. I think the first goal for us is so important, and if we can get that first goal, now it didn't work out against Motherwell, but on the whole, if we can get the first goal, then teams, can open up a bit and whatnot. Although teams have been pressing us high. It looks like we can't. For years we moaned about not being able to handle the low block. We've not been able to handle the high block this year either. But ultimately, you get that goal. Goals change games. But if we go behind, I don't think anybody trusts that team to kind of deal with that. So getting that Martin Boyle goal getting chopped off was such a huge moment in the game, because otherwise, as I said earlier, I think we're here having a completely different conversation. But if we can go to these games and get that opening goal, it does make such a difference.
Yeah,
especially how this team wants to play.
Just on Raskin, it's funny, I was listening this morning, I don't know if you heard on the radio, but Alan McCoy was saying, well, it was actually put to him by a caller on his breakfast radio show that Raskin should be made the captain, and that would be a move that would get the fans on side. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, Raskin has been touted for captain. He was handed the armband by Philip Clement, wasn't he, when James Tavernier was injured for the Old Firm Derby win last the January game? I think Tavernier was out, wasn't he, and Raskin was captain, and it was a great. And I think people thought then, that here's a future captain.
Yeah, the wee sort of set two with Callum McGregor just at half time, didn't he?
And people were saying that's what we want, we don't see him.
A wee bit of Dig taking the fight to them. Yeah, listen, I
mean, it would be some leap to go from falling out with the guy to giving him the captain's armband, but do you think it would make a difference in the eyes of the fans? Do you think it would get the fans on side if he did that, or?
Listen, I mean, we don't need to go over the whole James Tavernier debate again, but generally speaking, if you think you're going to strip the captaincy off somebody, they need to have done something to deserve it, and I still think James Tavernier gets a hard rep from the Rangers support at times. I think I don't think it's his fault that he's been put in teams at times that are failing. I don't think he's been great at times, but I think he's been far from Rangers' worst performer over the time. His time at Ibrox, I think he's been sort of the hospital pass a few times by managers' recruitment. I think he's had to put up with a lot, and more often than not, he's dug Rangers out of hole. But I think he's dug Rangers out of more holes than he's put them in. That's probably the fairest way to put it. So, so I take it off him. Yeah, but I'm not so sure how much of a difference the captaincy, how tangible a difference that makes these days. Well, not it's still something that players and teams really get themselves massively bothered about.
Yeah.
But if they were going to do it, they would have to do it in a way certainly that would be, they would have to handle it correctly, is what I'm trying to say. I think you have a risk of saying it looks like a slight on James Tavernier, one that he probably doesn't deserve. But, if you're really wanting to galvanise or have a galvanising figure, I think there's no doubt that Nico Raskin is probably a better leader of men, if you want to put it that way. I mean, we all hear that James Tavernier's no one for giving big, stirring speeches. He's more he'll lead through action rather than words. But I think you could argue that Nico Raskin's a more dynamic figure in that sense.
Yeah. Douglas, let me ask about two lone players, quite contrasting. You've got Mikey Moore, youngster coming up from Tottenham. He's getting a bit of seems to come in for a bit of stick. He obviously arrived, amid huge fanfare and a real sort of generational talent. They were saying on the flip side, you had Jade Magoma coming in, almost slipped through slipped in the door almost unnoticed, and he is somebody who's, he's arguably been the brightest part of admittedly there's not many positives, but he's been one of them. Aren't you been impressed with him? Do you think Mikey Moore's getting a raw deal? I mean, Antman comes on and it almost scored a cracker of a goal, didn't he? Towards the end. Do you think he should be starting ahead of Moore? Do you think, as has been hinted at, sometimes these big Premier League clubs send the young players up and say, yeah, but he needs to play a certain amount of games. So I don't know whether that could be a factor in it. But what do you think of the two players, Moore and Magoma?
I mean, the whole Mikey Moore signing for me was really, really strange. I'm not a big fan of these development loans at a club of our size because, we've seen it before with guys like Diallo, came up here and for a few games looked a world beater, but then the reality of Scottish football hits, and I mean that literally, hits them for the back, It's a tough learning curve. So I don't think these development loans ever really worked for Rangers. In fact, when we signed them, me and a few of my mates were kind of trying to come up with an example where a development loan had worked out for Rangers. Diallo done okay, and he's obviously went on to do well for Man United. Somebody who claimed it was a good signing was reduced to claiming that Ryan Kent was a development loan signing when we brought him in, but he'd played 100 league games by the time he came to Rangers. So, but I think Mikey Moore certainly seemed to take up a different position on the pitch on Saturday, a lot more inside, a lot more inverted. I think the feeling was that he played it very safe every time to get the ball, but you don't know if he's working under instruction from the manager there. And ultimately, Mikey Moore's going to be a Tottenham player next year. Antman's going to be a Rangers player. So, we need to find a way to get our player in the team. We're already heavily reliant on loans. I mean, our entire defence just about which including Megoma, is basically entirely made up of loan signings. So maybe I'm a bit kind of set my ways with a Mikey Moore one because I've not seen enough for him to justify being played in front of one of our own players. Frankly, although he did get a good assist on Saturday, which I think will help him. But Martin clearly trusts him. He played him against Celtic. He's clearly a guy who he trusts despite his young age. Whether Tottenham have put something in that he's got to play a certain amount of games, I don't know. But the whole signing for me has just seemed odd from the start. Meg Home, ironically, I think was brought in as a bit of, it kind of reeked to a bit of desperation that, oh my God, we need a left back because we've just let a few go. And yet he's come in and he's looked okay. He looked a wee bit physically weak in his first few games, but he seems to have kind of got those kind of cobwebs brushed away. He was superb. I remember when the goal we did manage to score against Bruges. It was his cross, I think. Showing that he can do it going forward, and he's just a guy that kind of quietly goes about his business, and then at the end of the day, you say, "Oh, Mike Holman was a 6-7 out of 10 today." So that's actually what we need right now. That's the kind of guy. We just need a guy to go about his business. Don't make any stupid mistakes. Almost for a defender, don't draw attention to yourself. Don't make the story about you, because otherwise something's gone wrong. And he seems able to do that. But
he's linking well with Gassama, isn't he?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was an issue, a big issue last week against Hearts. You had Mickey Moore on the left-hand side alongside Makoma. I felt the two of them were obviously 18 and 19 years of age, quite lightweight, lacked experience, and I felt Hearts, Derek McInnes really took advantage of that. Obviously, they played Harry Milne over in that. He's usually a left-back. They played him at sort of right wing to sort of double up on Moore, and Moore just had I think he'd taken off at half time, didn't he? Just got absolutely no joy whatsoever. He's obviously back in the team. Douglas is right. He sort of playing a more sort of narrow central role, came in sort of trying to make it a box in midfield. But I think just given again, it's one of the pitfalls of watching these kind of YouTube highlights reels. You see him playing for Spurs in Europe and running past guys and slalom through a midfield and a defence and tucking the ball away and laying off assists. It's a bit different when you're coming into Scottish football, and as you say, there's guys snapping at your ankles, and there's packed defences, and there's just spaces. It's such short supply, so it's harsh. You don't want to leap to conclusions. A guy, especially wingers, we all know, can be temperamental beasts, and certainly at 18 years of age, you're far from the finished product. But I think he definitely needs to step things up significantly if he's going to play, if he's going to justify a play as well or not. You say there's an agreement in place, which means he plays regardless. But I think you're right. I mean, Antman deserved to come out of the team because he wasn't playing well either. But I think the weekend again had flashes there that you can say, that's what he's like when his confidence is high. I mean, this is the whole thing for Russell Martin, and perhaps maybe you do have to sit there and go, well, fair play for the whole team bonding thing. That's a team, as I mentioned earlier on, that so many guys, their confidence has just been absolutely shot within weeks of them moving here, and that anxiety, that fear that Russell Martin's talking about. Yeah, it's not a surprise. We've all seen it. We've all seen it with our eyes. The surprise is that they've signed guys that allow themselves to get themselves mentally into this kind of position early on. But they're here now, and this is what Russell Martin has to work with. It's his job to manage them. So if he can get their confidence levels better, as you say, if he can strip back elements of the game plan that take away some of the riskier side of it, and if they can get, as you say, as Douglas says, get the first goal, just build a bit of momentum, then maybe he can turn it around. Maybe, as I said, that is a long, long way to go before he's anywhere near that. I mean, one result, he needs to go 10, 15 games. He needs a couple of statement results, and performances need to look pleasing on the eye. Yeah. If he's just scraping one, Will said at the start, he needs to find a way to win whilst developing. I think, given how bad it's looked for so long, he now needs to blow the fans' socks off if he's going to win them over. Because if it's turgid, if it's gritty 1-0 wins here and there, they've already made their minds up on him. If he's going to turn this around, he needs some serious wins and some serious performances.
Yeah. Well, that was the first, you mentioned it, that was the first of a 5-game run before the international break. So that's a chance that we put out a winning run. I mean, 5 would be the dream scenario for him. Genk in the Europa League on Thursday, Livingston and Falkirk away either side of a trip to Austria to face Sturm Graz. So, we're looking to try and get momentum, get confidence. Genk, as you mentioned, Douglas, poor start to the season. They're sitting 14th in the Jupiler Pro League, lost, albeit in the last minute, to Union Saint-Gilles, champions, to be fair. But it was a late goal that sunk them there. Thomas Fink, the manager, ex-Bayern Munich player, under pressure. They've got the Greek teenager. He's valued up at 40 million, isn't he? You saw him at Hampden, I think he scored in that game, linked with Arsenal, ex-Celtic striker, who was on the verge of a £24 million move to Stuttgart during the transfer window with that collapse. He came off the bench at the weekend. But I think Konstantinos Karetsas, just want to make sure I got that pronounced right.
Is that the usual spelling, Gav? Usual spelling?
Usual spelling, usual pronunciation. But he But he's been out injured for the last couple of games, so I mean that'd be a huge boost if he was unavailable. It looks like he could be missing for the trip to Ibrox. But Genk at home, struggling, manager under pressure. Rangers really should be looking to win that game. Then they're going to Livingston. And then if they can get that one, as you said, Douglas, they could be going near bottom of the table, depending on what Aberdeen do. But it's a chance, really.
The only way's up at that point, then, Gavin.
Well, that's true. But to follow up the Hibs game, surely they've got to be looking, as Andy says, get a morale-boosting victory on Thursday. It's a chance to really, put on a show, make a bit of a statement, isn't it, Douglas?
Yeah. Listen, I've got a bit of I wrote about Rangers in the Europa League today on our website, if anyone wants to check it out. And I've got a bit of a bugbear about how in Scotland we kind of view European football. I don't think it's going to happen this season because I don't think we've got the coaching staff or players at the moment. But I think Rangers, if we're in the Europa League, our ambition should be to win it every time we're in it. Because I don't think it's the competition it was. Even when we got to the final in 2022, I think the Champions League, which, let's be honest, is a Super League in all but name, is kind of ripped a bit of the quality, a bit of the standard out of the Europa League. And I think we should stop kind of viewing it as, wouldn't it to be great to get out the group stage? I think there's still that mentality. Rangers as a club, frankly, have underachieved in Europe for 60 years. 5 finals in that time, I actually think it's a poor return for a club of our size. And I think we should be going into these games with an expectation that we should be winning them, and we should be winning them well. I think things have improved in the last, basically since Gerrard came in. I was quite taken with the reaction to when we beat Panathinaikos 2-0, a team who I don't think we've ever actually beaten at Ibrox. In fact, I don't think we've ever actually beaten them. Over 90 minutes, and the reaction was very much like, we should have lost that game, but we're through. That's a routine win. That's how I think it should be on Thursday night. We should be looking at it as a routine win. It obviously won't be because of the situation, but I'd like us as a club to kind of show that ambition. Obviously, we want to be in the Champions League going forward. But then you see a team like Union SG, who we've beaten twice in the past 3 years, winning in the Champions League. It's not. European football's not beyond us, and we shouldn't kind of. And I still think there's an element that think of it as this kind of exotic thing that we is almost to be endured rather than enjoyed. I think we should embrace it, and I think a club of our size should be going into Thursday night looking to make a statement, not just from Russell Martin's point of view, but a statement to the other teams in the competition. If we were in a normal situation, which we obviously aren't really right now, but that's kind of where I think we should be aiming for. I know that's not really the question you asked, but
good shout.
I think it's just something that's important to be said. In the shorter term, look, I mean, a win on Thursday sets us up great for our relegation 6-pointer on Sunday. So,
well, I think that's a good place to actually to wrap up. Andy, you're going there. I think Douglas, you'll probably be going as well. Can you make
on Douglas again?
Well, can you make
everything's fine now, Andy? Everything's fine now. We beat Hibs. It's all good.
Can you make sure you don't keep this guy off his work if your ticket's in next to the press desk? We need his.
Pyro makes me sneeze, please. If you don't, just keep the pyro away.
We need
absolutely. I'll keep my smoke bombs well away from the press area. Don't worry.
We need his balls. We need his report in time. He's slow enough. Right. Okay. Right. Well, enjoy the game Thursday. Enjoy the game Sunday. Can reconvene next week and see where Rangers are in the table. Both tables, actually, the league phase of the Europa League and the Premiership. So, thanks very much to both of you for joining us. And meantime, thank you for watching, and you can catch us on the usual socials on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, and Apple Podcasts. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.